The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to a look at the new Drf Bets platform, as well as a look ahead to some fabulous stakes racing from around the country on Saturday. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, coming you from Keeneland, where, of course, it's opening day. Very excited to be taking a look at this opening day card in short order. And we have a pretty cool team put together to help out with this tour of the new Drf Bets site and a look at these stakes races. We're going to start with a guy. He's often in these webinars. He directs them. He produces them. He is, I'm not sure if I got your official title, but I'm going to take a shot. He is a product guru. Jake Luft. Jake, how are you today?
Product manager, product guru. That's fine. Yeah.
I think you got to put guru on the business card.
Well, yeah. Basically, when you want to complain about something, it ends up in my inbox pretty much.
Jake will be talking about these races, showing us some of the new cool functionality on this Drf Bets platform. We are also joined by, he's one of my favorite racing broadcasters. You see him all over the DRF site, whether it's in his writing or the fabulous videos he does along with our colleagues Mike Beer and Matt Bernier. He's Dan Illman. Dan, how are you today?
Doing great. Got to be excited about this weekend's racing. I mean, 3 major Kentucky Derby preps. I mean, the Derby picture is going to be clearer than ever after this Saturday.
And hopefully we'll be able to guide folks through what some of these races are going to be looking like. But first, Jake, we're going to allow you to take center stage here and walk us through this new Drf Bets platform. What are some of the features that the new platform offers that you think are going to be useful to horse players?
Sure, thanks. And I'll leave the handicapping to you guys. I'll just walk through some of the cool functionality. This is Drf Bets has been around for a few years. It's kind of been like a portal of our partners over at ExpressBet, but this is kind of our first chance to do it on our own, and we've taken advantage of that by infusing a lot of the DRF content that you find kind of scattered throughout the site. We're doing that all kind of in one place, like a one-stop shop. And if you're a Bets member, you get all kinds of great stuff here, and it's worth signing up. We have a really cool offer right now. You get $150 free. So right away when you come to the homepage, you see I'm already logged in. One of the cool things we did was we're keeping track of your recent tracks, and a lot of sites do the, hey, set your favorites, but a lot of people are kind of too lazy to set their favorites, so we'll just keep track of the tracks that you're going to. And as you see here, so you see I've already been to Keeneland today. So when I go to Aqueduct, so now Aqueduct is up here. So usually you're going to be playing. Our research shows we do a lot of data research with things that our users do, and our research shows people are usually playing 2 or 3 tracks at the same time. So you got room here for 3 tracks. Let's go ahead and let's add Santa Anita, because these are the 3 tracks that most of us have been playing. And I think I went right past it. Okay, there's Santa Anita. So now I've got the 3 tracks that I'm probably going to be playing today. That a lot of us will be playing. Gulfstream 2 probably later. And so I can kind of just go, and then we've got on this side, we've got the upcoming tracks. We've got all the Euro action going on here. You can also say, hey, I only want thoroughbreds, or if you're a harness player, you can say I only want harness racing. And so you got quick access to anything you need right away as far as which tracks you want to go to. Let me go real quick back to the homepage, and we'll get to the handicapping very quickly here. On this side, we created this widget to keep all the DRF Live updates right here in your face. So right when you come to the site, you want to see some late news happening from our people out on the. We have people at every major track every day, so you can get up to date on anything interesting that has happened. You can also
late breaking news, potentially information about biases, that ability to be in touch, have somebody else, you're playing a bunch of tracks, have somebody else be your eyes and ears over on the right side there with that DRF live feed, easily accessible, and also a chance to listen to DRF experts like Dan Illman when you click over to the DRF TV button, which is right there, and see previews of stakes races from around the country as well. You can definitely see how this new platform's taking a step forward in integrating some of the top level content you're going to find on drf.com with your wagering experience.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about this widget is you can pop it out. This little icon right here. I don't know if everybody's necessarily familiar. And we got our West Coast expert here, Brad Free. So you can pop this out and kind of just take it with you. You know, Dan and the crew do a ton of terrific videos. They're incredibly popular on the site. They get a ton of views, and people come to us for these videos. So we wanted to be able to say, hey, go ahead and hit a pop out here, and you can kind of just, you know, you can watch the match show here. If you click on that, you'll get, so you can click on the Out of the Gate show, which has been really great every week. And you can just kind of take that with you as you go. Let's just go real quick to Keeneland today. I know we want to talk about the pick 3 starting in race 7. And right away when you come here, and I'll be very, very, very quick here, you know, you'll be able to watch the video here. It's a little early for the feed, but you can pop this out, and then you'll get the HD option. Keeneland does offer an HD feed. You'll be able to expand the screen. So you know, you got one here, and then you can add, if you want to catch up, if you want to keep track of, let's say, Aqueduct at the same time, you can do that. You can pop that out. You can have 3 of these pop outs up at the same time. There we go. Aqueduct's already up. Then you got some talking horses going on there.
Basically, you can transform your laptop into your own personal OTB,
right?
With that opportunity to watch those different feeds in a way where it's integrated into the site as a whole. You don't necessarily, yes, you can expand windows and toggle back and forth, but you can also keep track of a lot of information at one time, with the ability to then also dig deeper and augment your handicapping as you move forward.
And you can do up to 3 at the same time if you want to just stay on one track. And just kind of keep tabs on what's going on elsewhere. You can do 3 different tracks at the same time, and it's very quick to do. It's just a couple of clicks. So we're really looking to just make, you know, we want the user to have to execute fewer clicks to get to the cool stuff that they want. So we talked about integrating DRF content. So if you click here, you'll get, whoa, what just happened? We're glitching out a little bit here. Sorry.
Have the opportunity there, as you see, to pretty efficiently jump from track to track and race to race along the way. So should we dive in? Do you have anything else from a functionality point of view, Jake, or should we dive in and talk about this pick 3 today? We'll, you know, best way to demonstrate this stuff is to actually play some wagers here, I think.
Yeah, let's talk about constructing the pick 3. One of the cool things we can do is we can do the pick 3 here, like as a grid.
Very cool.
Yeah, and if you want to just, if you and Dan want to talk about what you like on the card, we can just start constructing these.
Let's bring in Dan Illman to talk about this. It's not the late pick 3, I guess. There is a 10th race after the Transylvania, but both Dan and I were a little more interested in the races leading up to it. Why don't we just go in order? What were your thoughts on race 7, Dan?
Well, I'm against the favorite. The 2 Almuth Mars 8-5 on the morning line for Kieran McLaughlin. Jose Ortiz has them out. You know this horse is going to get bet off of the 72 Buyer effort at Gulfstream. But that horse blew an easy lead that day to a long shot. And our great clocking crew, Mike Welsh and company, they gave this horse only a C+ work for March 22nd. I don't really think that was a great work coming into start number 2 in a very competitive field. So I'm kind of against him at his short price. I was down at Gulfstream for D Squared's career debut on March 11th, and he just happened to catch one of those Pletcher first-time starters that might be a future stakes horse. That's Otto Strait, and Otto Strait had been working with a horse that won for Todd on the Tampa Bay Derby card first time out, and Otto Strait looked very, very good in that March 11th race, dealing with pace pressure from an experienced horse and drawing away to win. D Squared tried hard to finish second, and I think it's notable that he got bet into the teeth of that Pletcher horse. He was 5-2 for Mark Casse. They expected some things out of him. That race has been pretty productive. The 4th place horse came back to overperform at 38-1, finishing second with a 75 buyer speed figure. I like D Squared's debut, and there are no Todd first-time starters in here. So he's going to be my main play in this pick 3. And if I had to use someone else, it would be the other Cassie, the number 3 Carote, who just has a beautiful pedigree. And he made his debut way back in October going 2 turns, and I think he just might have been a little bit short against a pretty good field. The winner of that race, I think, came back to win the Coronation Futurity, and it's a nice horse around 2 turns. Our clockers like what they see at a Carote. So for me, I'm kind of keying on the Cassie horse, but I think D Squared is the right one from the rail.
I'm with you that the 2 Cassies just look like the ones in there. They both apparently have been working well, and obviously this is a meet where Cassie's had so much success. One of the ones he points for, and it seems like not an accident that he's going at this double-barreled here on opening day. In terms of how you would bet the pick 3, Dan, would you to express that preference for D Squared over Carote? Would you change the increments of your wagers potentially, or would you bet them? Would you use them equally?
I think I would use D Squared as an A and Carote as a B. I think more of my opinion is D Squared. If Almithmar beats me, he beats me at a short price. Again, he can easily win based off of his career debut. I just didn't like the way he was very, very late to change leads, and the fact that he gave that up to a long shot in the stretch worries me. He's a pace factor one more time, but at a short price, I'd like to take a chance against him, especially when you figure you have to lean on the favorite in the Transylvania later. So I'll use D Squared as an A and Carote as a B.
I like it. And Jake, if you want to show how we can physically just go through the actual clicks of what you need to do. Now, the ticket maker functionality isn't built in here. You would have to do that on your own at this point and make punch in different sets of tickets.
Yeah, we're working on adding ticket maker, but for now you can kind of you can create your tickets this way visually, and then actually we can go back. You can still thread your tickets. You just kind of have to do it manually.
Right, and of course you can go to you can either use the ticket maker that is embedded into Formulator, or you can go to the website, which I believe is drfticketmaker.com, if you want to do that, and you could use that as if you don't want to have to just make the tickets in your head, you could create them there and then just come back here and punch them, and then hopefully down the line that functionality will be built right in. Let's move on to race 8. I had a lot of trouble with this race, Dan, and I ultimately just decided that it was competitive enough to me that I wanted to try to use some middle prices to try to get around the fact that this pick 3, because I like the favorite in the next leg, wanted to try to build a little bit of equity into the combinations I was playing. How did you see the 8th race?
Well, I agree with you in that if you want to look for value, you might want to try to go against the morning line favorite, although you have to admit Sister Can has been in awesome form for trainer Bernie Flint. I mean, heck, all she's done is win her last 6 races. And while I'm usually not too keen on the fairgrounds form, I think those buyer speed figures can be inflated. It is worth noting this horse doesn't need to just run at the fairgrounds. She won at Indiana Grand with a 90 buyer, 3 starts back, and she just seems like a very logical horse. I don't want her knocking me out of any kind of multiple race wagers, but like you, I don't think she's a complete cinch against these horses. I'm really interested in your opinion of my kind of alternative and a horse that I think I'd like to use in equal weight, and that's the 7, A Stroll in the Park, going out for Larry Jones, who kind of threw this filly to the wolves a little bit last year against some stakes horses, and then took her off a long layoff in an optional claiming race at Oaklawn last time out. And that was a race where I didn't think there was a lot of pace on. It was dominated by the horses up front, and A Stroll in the Park came with a good late rally to finish 3rd. I thought it was a great building block effort for her 4-year-old campaign. And second off the layoff, drawing outside in a race with other speeds, I think she's going to get the right trip under Florent Giroux. She's 5-1, I believe, on the morning line. And I think she's certainly a horse worth using along with the favorite. But I'm interested to see who else you like at prices.
Yeah, I mean, A Stroll in the Park for me is absolutely a must-use. Seems to be set up to run particularly well here. Connections also, like so many connections, target this meet. And it just felt like one who had to move forward and had some company lines that made her look like I wouldn't want to be playing tickets without her. So she was definitely in there. And then I was going to I didn't have anything at a huge number, but I was wondering if the pace hots up here enough. I know Nick Zito has not had the greatest of years to this point, but what better place to turn it around than Keeneland? Wheatfield has finished. I don't know exactly what the pace situation is going to be. We don't know how the track is playing yet. If a one-run type horse is going to be able to have impact, but I was just thinking 6-1 morning line felt like one who might, as a closer, Zito, famous name, but with the slow year, maybe one that could drift from that price and get involved. Probably a horse smarter to play in the underneath spot in verticals because of the running style, but not one I'd want to beat me, because I've just taken a guess that we're going to get more than that 6-1 of the morning line. Could you see throwing in on your tickets as well?
I could absolutely see that on my tickets as well. I mean, our friends at Timeform US have this pace expected to be fast. It could certainly aid a closer like Wheatfield, and this is a horse that's just getting a little bit of class relief. You look at stakes race after stakes race after stakes race, and it's not like she's been embarrassed in any of those races. It's just that she hasn't won in a while, and I like the fact that Nick's putting her in this spot where she's going to get a hot pace. She's going to come with a run at the end. I mean, she's been running in stakes races every race since September the 3rd, 2016. That was an allowance race. And guess what? She won that day from off the pace. She fits at a price.
I like it. So in this ticket that we're constructing, Jake, why don't we, just show people what that would look like to go ahead and click those. Boxes.
We were resetting the system there earlier, and everything's back now. So if we went back to, for example, race 7, you could see all of Byron's picks here. Byron King is our handicapper. You see, this is what would be in the selection grid in the racing form. And then as I was showing you with race 8, you can get the closer looks for each horse, along with any special stats, any hot stats that have come up. These are basically from the quick sheet, if you're familiar with the quick sheet. So that's all integrated here. And let's look at where we are so far. We've got the pick 3. I know Dan liked D squared and Carrot.
Yep.
And then we were going, who did we like in leg 2? We liked Wheatfield.
I think we want to use Sister Can, and we definitely want to use a Stroll in the Park. How would you, just for arguments, in theory, Dan, how would you allot the runners in race 8 in terms of A's and B's?
Boy, I guess I would use Sister Can and the 7 sort of equally as A's, and Wheatfield I might use as a B, simply because she kind of lacks a winning profile. But it's kind of a race where I'm almost inclined to use all 3 of them in equal weight. I think it's that wide open a race.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And now we'll move over to the pay leg, the Transylvania traditional opening day feature here at Keeneland, in a race that has some star power this year. Dan, how do you see it?
Well, if Analyze comes back with his 2-year-old form, he's just going to win, isn't he? He ran 2 races at 2 faster than anything else in this field has run in their entire lives. The question is, will Chad Brown have him ready to fire in his first start back, when I'm assuming he has big plans for a gigantic year? Analyze it, though, as a horse I think you have to use. I don't think you wake up in the morning and say, well, I'm completely against this horse and want him to knock me out of the pick 3, especially if a horse like Wheatfield comes in and might make this juicy. Determinant will scratch out of this race to run in the Bluegrass tomorrow. It appears Quick will scratch out of the Bluegrass to await the Arkansas Derby. I think a lot of folks are going to be singling Analyze it. I wouldn't argue too much with that, but I think you could look at other horses, horses like Captivating Moon and Admiralty Pier and Maraud. These are sort of logical horses that I could certainly understand. But if you wanted to go with sort of just a crazy bomb special, how about the number 11 Beer Pressure for our old friends at Luch Racing? This is a horse that hasn't raced since December. He's never raced on the turf, but his synthetic form was pretty good, as was his 2-turn debut in the King Arvey, a race that featured a pretty good pace, and he was up close to it. And the favorite Silent Sting came from mid-pack to run him down. He's 20-1 on the morning line, and he's a horse, he's not as talented as Analyze it. He obviously has to run the race of his life, but I could see him throwing him in as a C maybe in the pick 3. But Analyze it would probably be my lone A, and I would hope that Chad would have him ready to roll.
I think so. I think one of the advantages that Chad has, obviously fantastic trainer, not trying to take anything away, but when you've got the amount of horses and the powerful owners, he doesn't need to bring horses back when they're not ready to fire. And it doesn't seem to sort of fit. I'm not saying he's going to, have the screws to the horse necessarily, but I think he's going to enter that horse when that horse is ready to win. And I think, well, I like the idea, especially in a bet like a pick three that doesn't have so many combinations. It's pretty easy to throw in some prices, but I do think on that top line, you could analyze it alone with confidence, just based on how that operation works and based on the talent that he's showed so far. So, Jake, why don't you show? It's kind of cool to show how the tickets appear. And
so this is a nice tight ticket that Dan has put through. What we can do is, and we can still kind of treat beer pressure as a C here. Let me unclick them, and I can go ahead and let's just do a little bit of a little more juice, since this is a nice tight ticket. We'll go for $2, and you'll see the bet goes through, and then it shows up right here on your window. If I click this, it'll repeat the bet, or I could cancel the bet right here from here. And then what I'll do is I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna add beer pressure. I'm gonna bring this down to a 50-cent ticket, and let's just submit the bet again. And now we have beer pressure on our ticket. And then, so everything here kind of stays, so you can just kind of come back and just redo your combinations as you wish. So if you wanted to say, let's single Sister Can here, and let's make this, so now you've got this for $1. You can actually make this, and I say, well, I want to hit this, in case this kind of chalkier combination comes in, I'm going to hit this again. So now you've kind of got it's a little bit ticket maker-ish, like you've already, see how I've threaded these different pick threes? If I really like a combination, I can hit this green button here, and it repeats it right away. So now I've got this pick three covered with some threading and some different combinations.
I like the way the confirmed bet comes up, and I like the fact that you're seeing all of your physical tickets in one space over on the right of the screen, and that you can continue to manipulate them from there, whether it's you decide, I punched the wrong number, I'm going to cancel this one, or you know what, looking at it more, I should maybe have this combination with the two favorites again, and then just click the repeat button right there. It definitely seems like a pretty friendly system, and something that is going to make players' lives a little bit easier than the old way of doing things. Anything else on the functionality side of the new DRF Bets platform, Jake, or do you think we should take a look ahead to some racing for tomorrow?
The only other thing I'll mention is we have this really great handy dandy PP store right here in the inside of the app, so you can get all your you can get your classic PPs, and if you're a DRP player, you can get that, and you can just come right here, and you can get them for future days too. It's a lot like the PP store on drf.com, but you don't have to leave DRF Bets. You can come here and you can get your PPs for the day right here, and you get reimbursed when you wager. With your,
I mean, it's not quite one-stop shopping. Most players, I think, are going to want to augment, obviously, by looking at Formulator or the traditional PPs. But when it comes time, once you've done your work and it comes time to construct your wagers, there's just an amazing amount of information in one place, visually set up to make a horse player's life easier. I think those are some of the driving ideas behind the new platform.
And we will add, at some point in the near future, we will add the ability to get Formulator cards and Timeform US cards, and you'll get reimbursed for those too as you wager. That's on the upcoming slate.
Very cool. Very cool. There you go. Jake Luth, thank you for guiding us through the new DRF Bets platform. Folks can check it out at the URL you see there. What's the I know there's a few different ways one can navigate to DRF Bets. Is drfbets.com the best way to get there, or bets.drf.com? What do you recommend?
The best way is bets.drf.com. And you can, and I didn't even mention this, but this works perfectly. This is the same website on your tablet or your phone.
So very cool. I mean,
yeah. So like I can show, it's a completely responsive. It's called responsive, a responsive website. I don't know if that means anything to anybody. It's kind of a techie term, but if you look at it on your phone, it'll basically look like this, and you could go in and you can do all the same things that I just showed you. You can do them on your phone.
Tons of great information, more innovations to come, folks. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the old platform, but I think this is definitely a big step forward that people should check out. And if you have questions, what are the best? I mean, heck, hit us up during this webinar. Hopefully at the end, we'll have an opportunity to answer a couple questions. But for folks looking for more information, Jake, where should they go?
So you can come, obviously on the webinar, we have a customer service email, cservice2@drf.com. That's the letter C and then service and the number 2@drf.com. You can hit me up on Twitter anytime. I'm at JB Luft. So that's at JBLUFT. Or obviously you could hit Pete up and he'll forward that tweet to me as well.
Absolutely. You can find me at Looms Boldly. For folks listening live who want to go back and check this handicapping session out after the fact, we moved through a lot of things very quickly in terms of the functionality. You can watch it all again. This show will be archived at drf.com/YouTube. Lots of other amazing content there. Much of it provided by our friend Dan Illman, who we're going to bring back in now. Dan, I say we go from east to west and we talk about some of the racing we're going to be seeing on Saturday. And let's start with the Storied Wood Memorial. What do you think about this year's race?
Well, the Wood Memorial, Enticed is going to be the 6-5 favorite. He's the deserving favorite off of his win in the Gotham last time out. I have to admit, I've never really exactly been Enticed's biggest fan. I mean, I thought he was okay in winning at Churchill Downs last year around 2 turns. His Gulfstream seasonal debut was not great, and last time out he ran perfectly fine. He was stuck out in the middle of the track. He was given a very, very wide trip, and then he ran down a horse, a pretty nice sprinter in his own right. He just didn't want to go that far. I think Enticed, if he runs that race, is going to be very dangerous, but I think this race is going to come down to trip, and I think that Bob Baffert's number 8, Restoring Hope, is going to get a coveted spot, and that coveted spot is going to be tracking the 4 Old Time Revival, who was second behind Enticed in the Gotham. Old Time Revival showed in that race that he is a talented one-turn horse that probably doesn't want to go further than 7 furlongs or so. Old Time Revival's going to have to go 1 mile and 1/8 here, and I think Restoring Hope has shown the ability to sit just off the pace. If he sits second off Old Time Revival, there's a good chance that he could take this thing over turning into the stretch, and then it's up to him to hold off horses like Enticed or Vino Rosso or the late closers like Evaluator. I trust Baffert in this spot. He wanted to run him in the Sunland Derby. Restoring Hope didn't have enough earnings to get in this race, so he's had to sit on him. But this horse looked good last time out. It was not the strongest field in the world, but I like the way he finished it off the last 16th of a mile. Taking the blinkers off seems to have worked wonders for him, and I think this is just the right spot for Restoring Hope to stalk and pounce.
Let's take a look, Jake. I want to show people a fun formulator stat that I'm sure Dan's already familiar with, just to show folks some of the fun stuff they can do with formulator. Just take a look at Baffert in New York for the last year. It's for those who are looking to oppose him. It's fairly daunting when you look. You remember it wasn't that long ago. I guess it was before Arrogance Travers, where there was somewhat of a conversation going on Twitter about how Baffert, he hasn't had as much success as he used to have in New York. Well, pretty much from that day forward, if you just take a look, either the last year or last 2 years, I think the last year is the one that will be the most instructive. If you want to, this is the kind of fun thing I like to do with trainers shipping into a circuit. Yeah, I think it's safe to say he's found his form in New York, Dan.
He had that giant day on Belmont Stakes Day, obviously. Last year, I believe it was, with More Spirit, just ran away and hid in the Wood Memorial. He used to dominate at Aqueduct. If you actually go back on the past 5 years and look at his numbers at Aqueduct, they're not very good at all. I remember back in the day when he had horses like Congaree, he would come in and he would dominate races like the Cigar Mile. Aqueduct hasn't been as kind to Baffert recently, but again, this is Baffert. I think this horse has some upside and some ability. I think he's just caught the right spot. I don't want to play Enticed at 6-5. He's maybe the most likely winner on paper. I think he's an underlay if David Aragona's morning line is right, and David's a good line maker.
He is fantastic, and it's going to be an interesting race to see how it plays out. I'm torn, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about Old Time Revival. I think you already made the key point. This horse is, I think, developing and very talented but doesn't he just vibe like one of the ones who's going to probably do the best kind of work in extended sprints later in the year? I'm just scared. A lot of times I don't mind extra distance for a speed horse when they can sort of ration out that speed more. But just on the tape, he vibes like a little bit too much of a runoff for me. I like his chances to hang around for a piece, but what do you think his future is going to be, Dan?
I think he's going to be a poor man's Practical Joke, and that is he's going to be a best around one turn. I thought Jeremy Rose rode him perfectly in the Gotham. He tried to win the race at just the right point, open up on this field on the turn, and he had a clear advantage at the 3/16 pole. And you can either make the argument of one of two things. One, the distance got him, or two, a superior horse got him. Well, now he has to deal with longer distance, and he still has to deal with that same horse Enticed. I'm a fan of his as well. I really was. Before the race, I thought he could hit the board. And I think he can hit the board again in here. The problem was he was something like a gigantic price in the Gotham, and he's 6-1 on the morning line here. Maybe he'll drift a little bit, but I think he's best played underneath, and I would look forward to seeing him eventually cut back. Maybe he'll be a horse for like the H. Allen Jerkins at Saratoga.
I like it. I like that thought very much. Loaded, stakes-laden card at Aqueduct on Saturday. Is there another place, Dan, where you're looking forward to wagering besides the Wood?
Well, looking over the races, I mean, you have to look, I think, at the Carter. I think that's a race where it's a big field. You've got a horse like Army Mule, the number 2, who could be any kind for Todd Pletcher. He's 2 for 2 in his career. He's obviously had his share of physical problems because he's 4 years old and has been sparingly raced. Army Mule has run some very fast Beyer speed figures. If you watch his last race at Gulfstream, he did not break well at all. And if he doesn't break here from post position 2 in a big field, he could be in big trouble at a short price as he faces likely the fastest pace of his career and certainly the toughest competition. Horses that I'm interested in here are Awesome Slew, the 11, who is very, very logical. And if he stays at his morning line price, I think is very valuable as a play. Mark Cassey is bringing him back here instead of in the Commonwealth, a race in which I believe Awesome Slew won last year because he thinks he can get Awesome Slew ready to win a Grade 1 off the layoff. Awesome Slew should get some pace. He hasn't run since the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, but if you remember that day, if you thought the rail was bad, and a lot of handicappers thought it was, he was down on the rail for the first 6 furlongs of that race and couldn't get out until mid-stretch when it was too late to make an impact. He's a good, solid horse. I think Cassey will have him ready. And I also want to use the number 4, Do Share, coming out of the Tom Fool handicap, which was won by Skylar's Scramjet. I think Skylar's Scramjet took advantage of a nice situation, tracking Green Grotto in the early portion of the race. And while that situation might replicate itself one more time on Saturday afternoon, I think the pace will be a little bit faster. It wasn't fast for Do Share last time out, and he came with a good run. A fast pace, Do Share is going to come running this time, and he should be an okay price. Linda Rice has done a really good job with him. Those are the ones I'll key on. Army Mule, maybe he'll be a star for Todd and the next top sprinter in the country. I trust Awesome Slew's consistency, and I think Do Share will come with a run at a price.
I love those points in those cases for those two horses. When it comes to Army Mule, are you looking to actively oppose, or is this one you would attempt to save with and use defensively just based on respect for the talent, or are you too worried about the underlay?
I think you always have to be worried about the underlay, and I guess it's a decision from a win standpoint that you wait at post time. If David's right and the horse is 2-1 in the 12-horse field, taking a giant step up with a little bit of a layoff, I don't think I would want to play him. It's a decision where you have to deal with Awesome Slew's layoff. Do Share's going to have to come from off of the pace. I guess I would probably use Army Mule defensively, depending if I have prices in other races where I wouldn't want to, have a favorite like this knock me out where my opinions are right in other races where I have prices.
Those are the nuances of ticket construction. You're taking insurance when that insurance is inexpensive, but not overdoing it in that direction where you end up betting so inefficiently you don't make enough when your top opinion is right. And that's something that we talk about on the podcast a lot, and I know is really one of the underrated sort of hidden points to becoming a successful player. Wouldn't you say, Dan?
Well, I think it's the most important thing. I mean, obviously, handicapping is very important, but you've got to make the right bets and the most efficient bets, and of course, try to make as many scores as possible to make up for the times where you inevitably will get cold from a handicapping or gambling standpoint. But it's all about efficient wagering, and that takes practice.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to Keeneland. Once again, 5 graded stakes races on the card. Let's start with the one that has been the talk of Lexington since I've gotten here. People very excited, of course, with this run up to the Kentucky Derby now in full swing, and key prep race historically, of course, the Bluegrass Stakes. How important will this race be, Dan, for this year's Kentucky Derby?
It's going to be very important, especially if the number 11 Good Magic, last year's 2-year-old champion, returns to his Breeders' Cup juvenile form and puts on a show, because he will then be one of the choices in the Kentucky Derby. Weather is going to be a big factor at Keeneland on Saturday. We're expecting a snow in the morning. Hopefully it's not going to be too much. The track should be wet at the very least. Quip is expected to scratch to run in the Arkansas Derby, determined to draw in from the also eligible list. Good Magic, certainly his Breeders' Cup Juvenile was a nice performance. I was a little bit disappointed by his race at Gulfstream on the comeback, where he seemed a little bit uncomfortable on the turn and only running in spots. And I guess there's a built-in excuse. It was his first start of the year. It was only a starting off point, but he's going to take a lot of money in this spot. I'd use Good Magic in multiple race wagers, but I'm interested in Sporting Chance for Wayne Lucas, and I'm worried about getting the price on the morning line, because it seems that a lot of sharp handicappers I've been talking to also like Sporting Chance in this race. He was good enough to win the Hopeful for Wayne Lucas last year over a wet track, and unfortunately he was injured after that race. Wayne's now had 2 chances to run him, and I like the fact he's run him in route races both times, legging him up for this 1 1/8. The first one back over a muddy track, he was in with a chance at the 3/16 pole, gotten a little bit tight, and I think he was just a short horse. Last time out, if you watch the replay of the Rebel, he had no chance with the trip he got. He must have been 4 wide, 5 path all the way around the track. He was still punching on in the stretch. That wide trip just cost him every chance to win. I think with this inside post, he has enough speed to either lead or stalk. He'll be in with a Sporting Chance turning into the stretch. I think that Mr. Lucas might be back in the Derby with Sporting Chance. I like him in this spot.
Be an amazing story, and make a very sensible case. One I wanted to mention, sort of the opposite of Old Time Revival, who we talked about, in the Wood. That horse being suited for sort of extended sprints, the way that the 1-turn mile can sometimes play. I thought Free Drop Billy was a horse for whom that 1-turn mile just seemed too sharp last time, and feels like one to me who might just be better around 2 turns, and maybe you get a little bit of juice in the price with that disappointing looking running line as the favorite coming out of the Gotham. What do you think about Free Drop Billy? Is he one who will be on some of your tickets?
I agree with you about your analysis. I really liked his performance against Audible in his first start of the year. I know Audible ran away from him at the quarter pole, but I think Free Drop Billy was a short horse that day for Dale Romans. It was just sort of an odd spot, turning him back in distance. And David Aragon out of the gate made an interesting case for Free Drop Billy last time. Watched the head-on of that race. He was in and among horses, and maybe just seemed very, very uncomfortable. He didn't get a chance to do his best running until late. We also have to remember that this is the scene of Free Drop Billy's greatest triumph. That was in the Grade 1 Breeders' Futurity last year at Keeneland, so we know he likes the track. I would not be surprised at all if he fires a big shot.
All right, what about the rest of the Keeneland card on Saturday, Dan? Where else are you interested in getting stuck in from a wagering point of view?
A little bit interested in that Madison Stakes. Boy, that looks like a loaded Grade 1 sprint for the fillies and mares, and we've got some familiar names in here. Lewis Bay for Chad Brown, American Gal, the winner of the Test Stakes, the most prestigious race for 3-year-old filly sprinters last year, and Amiz Mesa, who of course was the runner-up in last year's Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint. The one that I want to try, though, is the number 8. Miss Sunset. Miss Sunset is proven over a course and distance. She won a graded stakes race at 7 furlongs at Keeneland last year, and she prepped for this race last time out at Santa Anita in an off-the-turf race that she was supposed to win, but she was supposed to win the way she won, in hand, dominating, with a big figure, a good prep for this performance. I think as the year progresses, American Gal will probably be one of your A sprinters. Miss Sunset might then revert to being sort of a B or a B plus. But the fact that Miss Sunset is catching American Gal off the layoff, Amise Mesa off the layoff, I think that gives Miss Sunset an advantage. And I also think from a trip standpoint, she's going to be sitting just off the 4 Miss Locust Point and ready to pounce turning into the stretch. I'm just hoping the recency, the race over the track last year helps Miss Sunset. I just hope the track isn't too wet, because if you go in Miss Sunset's lifetime formulator past performances all the way back to the one time she was on a true sealed wet track, it didn't look very good.
That's something to pay attention to, and we'll have to see what happens with this weather. It does seem like the forecast has improved a little bit anyway, but something to keep an eye on, and potentially could cause some alterations in your tickets as the day goes forward tomorrow. While we're talking Keeneland, we got another grade 1 on this card as well, I believe, Dan. In addition to the Madison, we've got the Ashland. Did you have an opportunity to take a look at that one?
I certainly did, and unfortunately, it looks like the odds-on favorite, Monomoy Girl's just going to be way too tough here. She made such an eye-catching move last time out at the fairgrounds and then just put that field to bed. It was a very visually impressive performance, and that's why she's 4 to 5 on the morning line. I guess the second choice on the line, Eskimo Kisses, has some talent, but when you watch her most recent start, boy, she got a fast pace to close into in a race where the pace completely collapsed. So I'm not really sure how to rate that performance. I guess it's nice to know that she has won over a sealed, sloppy track in the past. But I just think that if the Monomoy Girl that we saw from her most recent race shows up, she'll be too much. Maybe a kind of weird, wacky long shot to use underneath is the number 6, Ipanema Beach. This is a horse I think was against the race flow last time out. Whether she's good enough to win this race, that could be a completely different story, but she was up against it from a pace standpoint, and Ipanema Beach might be able to sneak into the number, but I don't want to really have too much money in against Monomoy Girl.
I like your slip with getting Girl and Ipanema in there. You a Antonio Carlos Jobim fan?
It is.
I love it. You talk about the race flows, and one of the greatest ways to see that, the easiest ways to see that, is in Formulator now that the time form US numbers have been embedded in there. When you look at Ipanema Beach, you can see those pace figures in the line of Ipanema Beach, and you see that they're coded blue. And a horse who's attempting to close into those type of fractions is going to be disadvantaged, making that second beaten 1.5 more impressive than it looks on the bare form. And then conversely, when you go up and you look at the number 2, who Dan was talking about, it was advantaged. You can buy a fast pace that was kind of melting down at the end, and there you see Eskimo Kisses, and you see those fractions coded red. The horse closing into those, not to take anything away from them, but there's always the possibility that a horse was flattered in that situation, and it often will pay to take a little more of a skeptical view when it comes to whether or not that race should be believed. Let me ask you, Monomoy Girl, in terms of this all stakes pick 5, Dan, how much of your pick 5, if you were playing the pick 5, how much of your pick 5 play would you funnel through Monomoy Girl?
I might even single her. The weather, though, of course, might be the biggest factor against Monomoy Girl in here. But boy, just her last 2 races, they're fast, they're visually impressive. She has a versatile running style. She has an inside post position. I don't really, again, want to have too much money in against her, especially when I think that her main competition might have been aided by the race flow last time out. So I think, again, over a wet track, you always have to be perhaps concerned about singling a horse, but I think I probably would single Monomoy Girl and hope the weather doesn't get her.
Makes sense to me, and I feel very similarly. Let's move it out west to a pretty exciting race from a sporting point of view, if not a gambling point of view, the Santa Anita Derby. This one, not telling you anything you can't see right there in the PPs. It sure seems like it's going to be a match between the top two contenders in here. Do you have a creative view? Is this a betting race for you, Dan, or is this one where you're just going to sit back and get the popcorn?
This is a spectacle for me, but I think JK made a very good point on out of the gate that if you do want to bet this race, make sure you have an opinion on one of the two. Don't water down your wager by using both of them. For me, again, I'm just looking forward to this matchup. I mean, part of me is hoping that Justify lives up to the hype and he becomes this super horse that could break the Apollo curse so we don't have to listen to it for the next 100 years or so. Bolt d'Oro, on the other hand, though, is just a battle-tested, hard-hitting, nice horse, and Justify is going to have him, I believe, nailed on tight if he's going to run hard with Bolt d'Oro, or at least play with him the way he's played with some of these other horses. Bolt d'Oro's last race, it was, of course, that controversial situation with all the bumping with McKenzie. It was his first start of the year. He had a couple of hiccups, which postponed his debut, and I think all in all, it was a useful and fast race from a very consistent and hard-hitting horse. I like the fact that he has experience. I like the fact that he's only stretching out a 16th of a mile, while Justify has to stretch out an 1/8 of a mile. Justify might be more naturally talented than Bolt d'Oro. He probably is going to get the jump on Bolt d'Oro turning into the stretch. But in this sort of situation, I kind of like the battle-tested, experienced horse. Again, this is a race for me where I'll just be watching with the popcorn, but I'll take Bolt d'Oro.
I'm getting excited thinking about it, actually, and when this race goes, I don't know what to expect. I'm just sort of throwing up my hands because, a lot of times you can get into trouble listening to trainers and taking their quotes too literally. But in the case of Mick Ruiz and Bolt d'Oro, this was the horse, of course, who after he won the Del Mar Futurity, he sort of famously said, well, that he was about 80% fit. Cynical guy that I am, it's like, yeah, right. How is that possible? And then he goes and runs off the screen in the front runner and makes you believe that he was correct. He was 80%, and that was the A race that we saw in the front runner with that 103 Beyer speed figure, which of course Andy Beyer has talked about how that was projected down from a raw number that would have even been higher. So now he's saying once again that for the last day, the horse was 80% fit. So if he's going to take another step forward, like he took from September, early September to late September next year, there really isn't going to be much beating him, I wouldn't think, unless Justify really can live up to all the chatter, and not just the chatter, the figures and the visual impression that he makes it as well. It's really going to be something. And I just can't wait to see it and watch it unfold. How about from a gambling point of view, Dan? Is there one of these stakes races at Santa Anita on Saturday night that you're looking forward to from a wagering point of view?
I'm looking at race number 5. I'm really not sure what kind of price I'm going to get on the horse I like. Paved is going to be the favorite, and deservedly so. She won the El Camino Real Derby against the boys. Actually earned some Kentucky Derby points, I think, for that race. I love the fact that they didn't get Kentucky Derby fever, and they were back here on turf at 1 1/8, a distance that she absolutely relishes and a surface that she absolutely relishes. I think Miss Bad Behavior's got a pace edge in this race. And that might be the determining factor. Take a look at those red time form U.S. Color-coded pace fractions for her most recent start. That was a race that featured several horses that are coming back on Saturday. Miss Bad Behavior was close to that fast pace. She took over. She did not feel the effects of that fast pace, and she went on to win in very, very nice fashion. Now she's got to do it at 1 1/8. But the time form U.S. pace projector believes that Miss Bad Behavior is going to be able to get out there and control this pace over Paved. I wonder if folks get a little bit overboard on Paved because she did beat the boys last time out in a Kentucky Derby prep, quote unquote. Miss Bad Behavior for me is an intriguing pace play, especially because she handled fast fractions last time out, And even though she has to go longer this time, she might not have to go as fast. So Miss Bad Behavior might be a little bit of a play. I know she's only 5-2 on the morning line, but I think she's pretty good.
Were you thinking of her more as a vehicle for verticals or horizontals, or keeping it simple with a straight win bet potentially?
Really, again, depends on the odds. I'm kind of hoping they go overboard on paved. Miss Bad Behavior's 5-2 on the line. I think at 5-2 she's worth a win play. But probably other than that, I think I would be concentrating on her in multiples and maybe trying to take just a little bit of a chance against paved. I mean, paved was good certainly last time out. She's been good in her 2 races, but I wonder if this is a situation where pace makes the race. I know in the pace projector, paved is up close to the pace, but I just was taken by Miss Bad Behavior's performance last time out over this Anita track, and I'm hoping maybe she just is able to open up at the right time on the turn and paved can't catch her.
All right, we've got a couple of questions come in. We'll spend just the last couple of minutes of the show getting to some of them. The first one, Jake, this is going to be for you. For folks who are using the new platform for DRF Bets, who are familiar with the old platform, do they need a new login to access the new DRF Bets platform?
No, the login is the same. Your bankroll is the same. All of that is the same.
Excellent. And for folks, people, horse players, creatures of habit, if you prefer for some reason the old wager pad, is that still something that's accessible to you?
Yeah, of course. And there's still a couple things on the old pad that on the old site that we haven't brought over that we will in the next few months. But that is still 100% functional, and you can still continue to use that as you please.
Excellent. Here's a question that I hate. Maybe Dan will step up to the plate and answer it. It's the most frequently asked question this time of year about our Derby horses. When I was in England recently, I had seen that one of the local bookmakers had a 16-1 price on Justify. At the time, I was thinking he was going to go to Arkansas and win, and was thinking that was a bet I just wanted to make because I knew after the Arkansas Derby especially, he'd be so much shorter. By the time I got to make the bet, that price had come into 12-1. I decided not to make it. That's the only wager I've considered making, so I guess technically that makes Justify my Derby horse. However, I'm not thrilled. I just think we're going to know so much more after this weekend. I'm not comfortable making a pick that I want to have my feet held to the fire on yet on this year's Kentucky Derby. How about you, Dan?
Mike Beer, Matt Bernier, and I made our Derby top 5 in this week's Out of the Gate to open up the show, but I have trouble picking the Derby winner the first Saturday in May, so it's hard for me to imagine giving it out before the Santa Anita Derby. Bolt d'Oro was my number 1 going in this week, and obviously things could change if Justify handles him. Even if Justify doesn't handle him and Bolt d'Oro comes out of the race the right way, though, I have a feeling that he's going to give a good account of himself at Churchill Downs on the first Saturday in May, Justify or no Justify. These races are called preps for a reason. Justify has 0 points. He kind of has to run first or second, doesn't need a win, and on paper it looks like he'll do one of those 2 things. I don't think you could make the argument that Bolt d'Oro maybe doesn't have to be cranked up to win on Saturday, that he'll have enough points, they'll be happy to run second, and then he'll peak on Derby Day. I'm not sure how good trainers are good at doing that sort of thing, but right now Bolt d'Oro is my number 1. I guess if the Derby was run tomorrow, I would probably pick him, but we have a long way to go. That's a tough question, but we get it every year.
It's understandable. It's what everybody's
absolutely
it seeps into the consciousness. Let me ask you this about the Santa Anita Derby, just as a follow-up from me, Dan. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing for these horses to have such a tussle potentially on their hands by having this sort of the 1 and 1A contender for the big race both going in the same race? Do you think that will end up being a net positive or potentially a negative for both of these horses just to have to face each other before the big dance?
I think it would be a positive for Justify if they have to throw it down, because I think he needs that sort of battle-tested seasoning. I think it could be a negative for Bolt d'Oro because he already has that tough race, and that was a very, very tough race with McKinsey last time out, and I wonder going into the Derby off of 2 gut-busting efforts if that might be a little bit of a difficult situation. But I guess if you put my feet to the fire on that one, I would say I'd rather have a horse coming off of a real tough race than an easy one. I mean, we saw Roy H. go to Dubai just off the easiest prep imaginable, a race which was like a public workout in Southern California, and just wondered, did he get anything out of that to go to Dubai? And then he got beat at a relatively short price by a very good horse in Mind Your Biscuits. I don't know. I like horses that are tested in the heat of battle. Yes, the Derby is, of course, a different animal with 19 other horses at 1.25 miles over an unfamiliar surface for a horse like Bolt d'Oro. But I want to see a test for Justify. I think he needs that going into Churchill Downs. Bolt d'Oro, I think his connections would be a lot happier if it's not that tough. And that's why if Justify kind of has a big lead on him in the stretch, I wouldn't expect Bolt d'Oro to get beat on late.
Very excellent points. Really, really interesting way of looking at it, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. We have time for one more. We had a question about Flame Away in the Bluegrass. What do you think of this contender, Dan?
How can you knock a horse like this that has won on wet dirt, especially Keeneland wet dirt? He's won on synthetic. He's won on turf. He's won on fast dirt. He's won at distances between 4.5 furlongs and 1 1/16. And if you want to make the argument that he was compromised by the pace situation in the Tampa Bay Derby, I can make that argument. I'm a little bit concerned about the 1 1/8. I know he's looked good at distances up to 1 1/16. I won't knock anyone that likes Flame Away in here simply because he is so consistent. He is so hard hitting. And maybe the best point from a wagering standpoint, he's underrated too.
I like it. All right, that is all the time we have. Folks looking for more information, you're going to find a ton of it on drf.com. Have an opportunity to watch Dan recapping this weekend of action in videos that will appear early next week. You'll have an opportunity to listen to or watch Out of the Gate, a show that Dan hosts, and I have an opportunity to contribute to once in a while. If you want more from me, you can also always check out the DRF Players podcast. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at Looms Boldly. Jake, what's your handle again for folks who might have some follow-up questions about the new platform?
Yeah, it's a JBLUFT. So that's JBLUF as in Frank Tiro. I'm going to send it out here to the audience.
And Dan, I know your handle, but I can't remember if you have an underscore in there to deal with, so I'll let you give it.
It is at DRF_Dan Illman.
There you go. Chance to catch up with all of us and continue the conversation throughout this Triple Crown season and beyond. All right. Once again, you can find the replay, drf.com/YouTube. Lots of great information there. I want to thank our sponsor, DRF Bets. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and checking this out. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale, and you've been watching a handicapping session produced by drf.com.